if I do this, this comes out the other end. And we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. I had a visual, but go ahead.
Yeah, I know, right?
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name's David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs, and joining me is Donna Grindle of Carden. Good afternoon, Donna.
Hello, Dave.
So today, episode 390. Man, we're knocking down the door of 400. Woo.
Mm-hmm.
Got to do something special that day.
You know, but that requires us to put more effort in than we're barely able to do right now.
Maybe we should have one of those sip and chat days. We'll sip on some bourbon and do a show.
There you go. That might be it. Record a live show or something.
There you go. Yeah. Today's
still
going to
be
be
just
like,
me and you, though.
Yeah. Well, never know. Never know who might show up.
True that.
Today's going to be kind of like a live show. We're just going to be spitballing about website tracking stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. This is because we just couldn't find ourselves today. Doing too many things. So. Yes, we're going to spitball.
Yep. I don't know. I wonder why that term even came up. I didn't have time to Google it.
This is exactly what I mean about us. We're let's go Google that. Let's go search that. Let's find out where. That's the kind of rabbit holes we've been doing now for 2 hours.
It's your fault for not saying, we are not focusing on that right now, David. Instead, you just go, let's go. That sounds like a lot more fun than what we need to do. Let's go check that out.
You know, somewhere we need to get that done. When you knew it was bad when you had to tell me, don't go down the rabbit hole because I was reading PHP code.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
I'm reading the code like, I'm going to find it. I'm going to find it.
I know.
Yeah.
Should not bring a problem to a problem solver.
But that's okay. We can knock this out, though, so that I can go watch a football game.
Okay, then.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So we do want to remind everybody the Privacy and Security Boot Camp is coming up quickly. March 12, 13, 14, and 15. 3.5 day in-person event. It's going to be amazing.
And the price goes up in February, so.
Oh, so you better hurry up.
That's right. Get up in there. That or we fill up. It'll be one or the other.
Yep.
So make sure you get it done. Go to PriceActBootCamp.com.
Matter of fact, didn't we say that the 400th episode is either going to be recorded during that week or publishing that week?
Mm-hmm. I think it's due to come out the week after.
Week after, yeah. So we need to record it that week. So maybe we'll do our 400 show at the PriceAct Boot Camp.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, it would be interesting because we could bring people around. Oh, we might do that.
I was on the call. I was on a call today with some folks that I totally forgotten they were. You know, I don't think about the boot camp when I'm working on another thing, and because rabbit holes. And and they were like, "Well, we're gonna see you really soon," and I'm like, "Where?" Oh yeah. So we're supposed to record the 400th episode. I'm checking my calendar. I could be wrong. We know that. So, but it looks like March 24th is when it's due to come out. So that means we would be recording it at the boot camp. All
right, cool. We might make that happen. So for all you folks out there that keep emailing us wanting to be a guest on the podcast, if you show up at the PriceAct Boot Camp, you can be a guest on the podcast.
That's right. We do not have a shortage to be a podcast that is not an interview-based podcast. I mean, we do have interviews. You guys do not understand how many people would love to come on here and tell you about stuff that has nothing to do with HIPAA privacy and security.
Yeah. Or just, sell you their thing.
Yeah. The ones that do say, hey, thanks for referencing our stuff. Really appreciate it. Let's connect. Those are the ones we might interview. Mm-hmm. All right. So, yes. So that's another reason to be at the boot camp. There are so many things that are going to happen at the boot camp. We've got some giveaways. We got great folks there. I mean, it's going to be...
Yeah. It's going to be like Fight Club.
All right. Well, so get yourself signed up for Everything Gets to Be a Mess. And we'll see you in March.
That's right. All right. Before we dive into anything else, we do want to let everybody know that we appreciate the donors and those folks to help keep the lights on.
Yes. That is always key. And if you aren't a donor, please review us. We haven't gotten reviews recently because we don't whine and demand it.
We should.
Well,
Don't stomp
demanding
your
it
feet.
doesn't do us any good, though, does it?
If you stomp your feet, I'll whine.
So we don't show up higher up if we don't have a lot of reviews. So just saying, hook us
right.
up.
Come on now. Let's get both of our listeners to leave a review.
We'd appreciate that.
Yeah, we would.
All right.
All right. You ready?
I'm as ready as I'm going to be today.
All right. Cool. This is the shortest episode ever.
Okay, we're done. See you. Bye.
As we know, anytime we've ever said in the past it's going to be a short episode, it usually runs long.
Yeah, there's part of the problem.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to talk today about website tracking. And we covered this a little bit when all the Metapixel stuff kind of first started coming out.
Uh-huh.
But we've had other stuff come out. So we want to cover that because HHS put out some guidance on it. And of course, we know more about some things that have come out about that. And we want to talk about it because most people don't realize what your website is doing more than just telling people, here's where I am and what I do and how to contact me.
Yeah, to me, this is one, it's a perfect example of the reason that I worry about everybody that builds websites for healthcare people saying, don't worry, it doesn't have PHI or it's secure or, and they get these little chat boxes and these apps. And I'm like, are you going to talk to a patient there? Well, it could be a patient. It might not be. Okay. Mm-hmm. Hello.
Yeah. I told a developer one time, a website developer, I said, make sure they put the BAA on their site. And he said, why did they need an NDA on their site? I did not say that.
No. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, but they don't know. And of course, from a website developer standpoint, they're like, it's not my job to know. You should know what you need. It's your, vertical. It's your.
Yeah, but the developers are doing the work.
Oh, I know.
So they can be on the hook. And we've talked about, we've done a few episodes, I think, on the importance of securing your website, even if you think it doesn't have PHI on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then this whole meta mess, Metapixel mess, there's data breaches that are having to be announced. There's people being sued. Now Meta's being sued by the hospitals that, it's all over the place about this because nobody stopped and thought about it.
Yep.
Now, I don't use those things myself because we know we don't want to track what people are doing on our sites because our whole job is to not share information we shouldn't or collect it that we shouldn't. So we're a little different than most.
So what about, now this is not part of the conversation, but I'm bringing it up anyway because somebody's going to ask. What about things like Google Analytics?
Well, it depends on what you're collecting. And so what really happened here, Google Analytics tracks clicks and those kind of things, but Metapixel is moving advertising information. And unless you're doing something more sophisticated than most, Google Analytics is not going to tell you a ton of information that would include PHI. And in fact, that's what caused the problem is that, the online tracking vendor, Metapixels, was sending more information and capturing more information, but people were putting those things on websites without doing a risk analysis.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bottom line. I mean, if you're going to have any kind of engagement with a patient, then you have to question and do a risk analysis. And I think that's the big thing that everybody's like, well, the web developers don't even know you're supposed to do a risk analysis for anything, because that's all they do is they just make the web page and make it pretty.
Well, this is where the problem comes in, where you hear somebody say, well, this same web developer does it for dozens of other healthcare organizations. Surely he would know that, or she would know that, or whatever. I mean, we hear that with a lot of different vendors. They think just because they're doing business a lot in healthcare that they must know. And I'm here to tell you that you should be asking questions. Don't assume.
There are so many cases where we've tracked that down. Well, they were referred to us by so-and-so, and, they were referred to us by so-and-so. And then finally you get down the line to the person that started using them, and they really didn't have them do anything with patient information.
Yeah.
That would have even collected it. They just put an information up there.
Even when all this came out, it was hospital systems that were involved. So for those people that are like, oh, I got this small practice, and if the hospital system's using it, it must be good. Well, there you go.
Nope, you're right. And this stuff is easy to set up. Mm-hmm. And so then you have people who don't understand the technology itself and what it's actually doing sometimes as well. They just know the result. If I do this, this comes out the other end. And we'll leave it at that.
I had a visual, but go ahead.
Yeah, I know, right? But the piece that really people don't understand, and in the OCR page that they put out about this, which is really what we're here talking about, or what has us here, they make a point of there's a few things in the beginning that I thought, there's a couple of paragraphs, really good information on the bulletin. But regulated entities are not permitted to use tracking technologies in a manner that would result in impermissible disclosures of PHI to tracking technology vendors or any other violation of the HIPAA rules. For example, disclosures of PHI to tracking technology vendors for marketing purposes without the individual's HIPAA compliant authorizations would constitute impermissible disclosure.
Ruh-roh.
But then they point out, and a lot of times people are like, why does it matter? Why does it matter?
Mm-hmm.
And they make a point. For example, an impermissible disclosure PHI may result in identity theft, financial loss, discrimination, stigma, mental anguish, or other serious negative consequences to the reputation, health, or physical safety of the individual or to others identified in the individual's PHI. So there's just so many tiny pieces that if they're tied to a person, that's what matters.
Yeah. Well, it might not matter to you if you're the one that had the breach happen, but it matters to the people that the information belongs to.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize the IP address is protected health information. It's on the list.
Mm-hmm.
So if I do visit your site and you get my IP address, there's some things you should worry about.
Yeah, especially in this day and age where lots more folks have static IP addresses, or at least semi-static.
Right. So, but then you track it to a location, and then you also know the date and time.
Yeah. I mean, you take my IP address, even if it's not static, you still know what ISP it comes from. Mm-hmm. And, I'm using a fairly small ISP considering. So it would be easy to figure out what area I live in
Mm-hmm. So it's pretty easy to track these things down. And even like I mentioned in the Google Analytics stuff, it does track the IP address. But if all I know is I came to the website and it doesn't share, you don't know who I am or anything about it. But the minute you start collecting information and doing something with it, new ball game.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there have been times where I've called people up and said, we were doing our review of your website and this app you're using, I can't find any security information on it. What? But our developer said blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I can't. And it was just, never mind, hang on. And immediately you hear yelling, tell them to take that thing down. I've actually had that happen. We're not having it. It's not that important. Take that thing down.
Now, is this one of those things where people can say, when the patient came in, we had them sign something that said we can market to them, in our services? So no.
Nope. Does it say that I can send your information that you don't know that I'm going to be collecting to someone else without any requirement of them? No, can't do that. It's a clear no.
Okay.
But I mean, I have companies that do this kind of work that, they even sent somebody to our boot camp before because they will sign a BAA because they know. And I mean, they've been doing this for years. And, it's a pretty well-known company when it comes to tracking of interaction with the websites. But they didn't say, Donna, go ahead and tell them you do this for us. So I try not to, do that. But they came to me years ago and said, look, we need help to build this because this will be the only stuff, but we want to make sure we're doing the right thing by it. So they do sign a BAA so you can use their tool. But the problem is Meta ain't signing a BAA with anybody. Mm-hmm. And that's where all of this came to. But I know people, well, I don't log in there. Sorry, Charlie. You don't have to. They make a point, I'm trying to find it here, where they brought up some of the unauthenticated web pages. Here's the section on how it could be a problem even if you don't log into the web page. And there's a ton of stuff where they found tracking on the login page. So I don't log in, but because I have the login page and I went to it, I'm being tracked.
Mm-hmm.
But this section where they pointed this out, and this is one of the conversations I've had to have many times of, this information. So if I know that I have an individual go to the website, search for the doctor information, search for information on specific health related things, conditions and types of things. And, you see that all the time. I'm going to post information where you can learn about the things that I can help you treat. If anybody's doing that and they're not logging in, but you've tied all of that, what they're interested in and the doctors they're looking for, and all of that goes back to their IP address, well, now you got a new problem.
Mm-hmm.
You're collecting that. What are you going to do with it? And where does it go? So,
nobody knows.
What is the cloud?
It's good
What
to the
is
cloud.
It's in the cloud. Whatever that is, it's the cloud. But the big issue here is not taking the time to look. So twofold that we learned from this is if you're gathering information, you're gathering information. Now, what applies to that information from a legal perspective, you might want to know.
Mm-hmm.
And they do in here the obligations and so on and so forth. But a section they point out, even if HIPAA doesn't apply, we've talked about the FTC having health breach notification rule. It's possible that rule might apply if HIPAA doesn't.
Yeah, and we don't want FTC all up in here either.
No, not with those 20-year things.
That's crazy.
So for the most part, those cookie pages and the tracking cookies and all of that's not, it's, you've just got it and you got to make sure you do the right thing with it. It's when you give it to somebody else that it becomes a problem. I've collected all of this. Now what am I going to do with it?
Mm-hmm.
So knowing that you got a BAA in place, that simplifies everything. But don't you know that somewhere there's somebody whose business was all about writing these web pages. And they even found it in portals, like where you could log into a patient portal and it had tracking that was being sent to the Metapixel stuff was in it.
That's not good.
I can tell you right now, no. Unless whoever is getting that data and processing that data for you has signed a BAA, they should not be getting that data. So ask the questions. Isn't that what you said? You need to ask.
Mm-hmm. Don't assume.
We know what assume does.
Yeah, it'll cost you a lot of money.
Well, I've said before, I'll say sometimes in my sessions, and I'll say, and we know what assume does, and people go, no, we don't. What does it mean? And I'm like, ask the person next to you that's laughing. It does. But if you don't do a sort of an assessment of everything you do, you don't know what applies and you don't know what kind of data you're collecting. And for everybody who's like, well, I don't know why I have to do this, didn't have to do it before. You know what? Before we weren't collecting so much data and sharing it around the world.
Mm-mm.
So I do like that. I like that they're getting this message out, but I'm not sure that people are hearing it.
No, I don't think so. I mean, the few developers that I know or website companies, even though they're smaller, when I've talked to them about this, they have no idea. They're like, oh, I've never heard of this. Like,
and
really?
No one's ever asked them about it.
Yeah. And I know for a fact they do healthcare. Matter of fact, one focuses on healthcare. And he's like, oh, thanks for letting me know.
I'm not going to do anything.
I don't know that they'll do anything about it or not, but the fact is they're not in the business of paying attention to information security. They're in the business of developing websites.
Yeah, and generating traffic.
Yep. Gotta get the numbers so you can get some money going. And then there's also going to be those people that say, I just don't care. I've got to grow my practice, and this is the way I do it. And if it means using these things, and I'm going to use them.
So you're basically saying if it means not protecting the privacy of my information of my patients, I don't care.
Yeah. The cool thing about it is if you want to know if your provider is doing that, it's very easy to find out.
It is.
You can run their website through an online free tool and it'll come back and tell you if the Metapixel stuff is on there or not.
And where is that, David?
Oh, I figured you'd ask. I don't know. I got it bookmarked. Hold on, I'll look it up while you talk.
Well, we mentioned it when we talked about this before, and you couldn't find it, and and some folks did send it in asking for the reports, and I can tell you, I believe they were surprised with what those reports mentioned about the website and what it was doing. And it's because no one's taking the time to ask. So yeah, it's great. Patients can do this and I can do that and we can do, but if no one stopped in the middle and said, are we protecting the privacy and security of the information involved? It really is not a good idea to get all excited about what you can do. Because you might need to holler, whoa, Bessie. Back it up.
All right. So the best thing I can tell you, just so I don't give you the long URL, is Google Blacklight. That's the name of the thing. Blacklight. And you could probably just put Metapixel, but it's created by a website called themarkup.org. So anyway, if you go there, you'll see it. put in the website address, you hit scan, takes a few seconds, comes back, tells you whether or not the metapixel is on that site or not. So whether it's your own site and you want to make sure it's not there, because sometimes you don't know what's on your own site, because I know from people who develop sites, oftentimes they'll put things on your site even if you don't ask. For example, Google Analytics. So they could potentially put the pixel tracking on there, even though you didn't ask for it, potentially. So go in there and put your site in there, scan it. If you have a doctor's office or a provider or something, and you want to see if they're collecting your data when you go to their website, throw the site in there, scan it. Here you go. Cost you nothing, honey.
So there you have it, folks. It is an actual problem that you should not ignore. And I can tell you, these data vendors that want the data, that get the data, they're not giving it up. They're going to use that data in so many ways. And for those who honestly believe that it shouldn't be handled improperly, it's worth asking questions. And until you ask more questions of your doctors and the hospitals and stuff, but here's the bottom line, and I know this to be true. If you start asking questions, they're like, well, I'm sure we're secure. We get training every year.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, it's hard for people like us to go get any kind of medical care. You know, at least telehealth does make it a little easier because you can check out the app. We can do all of that ourselves. And then, but at the same time, it gets a little tricky to just go somewhere and you're hearing things that you know you should not be hearing. And you're seeing things that you know should not be happening.
Yeah.
But we get that all the time. And so contact the privacy officer at the facility or the business or whatever to say, hey, this is uncomfortable for me if you see it happening. Or you run this on your doctor's office, call them up and tell them, hey, have you done this? Do you know has anybody looked into this for you? They might appreciate it. Who knows? Because for most of them, they don't deal with this stuff all the time.
Yep. Well, the other part of it too is that you don't realize oftentimes what other things you put on your website that comes with ad trackers and third-party cookies and all that. So it's very, very easy to just, in the process of putting a site together, even if you're a website person and you're putting this stuff together and you're done with it and you're like, well, I didn't put any kind of tracking on it. And then you go and look and you're like, wait a minute, there's 3 or 4 different trackers on this thing because it comes in through other plugins and stuff like that. So it's very common. It's not like this is an uncommon thing. It's extremely common.
Or you have somebody that sells you this thing that they don't understand shouldn't be happening. And then you go to the web designer and say, here, they said, just do this. The web designer, they're just going to plug in whatever they've been told.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not always that they themselves have put it in there. It's that you bought a service from somebody. There's tons of these services out here that manage social media and you know, nothing makes me more nervous than one of them that say, oh, you don't have to worry about us. We got the hip thing covered. Oh no.
Yeah. And, you know, for websites, a lot of it, especially on WordPress, there's so much free stuff out there, which scares me because you and I see this. There is, I'd say there might be weeks that go by, but there's definitely not a month that goes by where you don't see some big WordPress hack happening. Like, you know, hundreds of thousands of WordPress sites are at risk because of this plugin. It's very similar to a smartphone. And you see all these problems with smartphones and apps that are running. It's the same thing with websites. You plug in all these little apps that do all these things. And, you know, some of them I look at and I've got them on my site and it's like some of them says the developer is WP Development. I'm like, okay. And then you got another one that says developer is Johnny. And I'm like, I'm not feeling very good about that one.
Yeah, I mean, you should look into Johnny a little bit more, but don't think WP Developer isn't Johnny's other name.
I know it could be, but some of them I recognize as being bigger companies, but but there's a lot of them that's like just a dude's name.
Right.
Like that scares me.
I mean, you and I have like layers of security on our website, constantly looking for these things and worried about. There's a source code change. Pooh. You have the one that monitors the WordPress standard against my source code, and the minute something isn't matching, it gives you an alert, great. But that means you actually have to go look.
Yeah.
We have it. You have to go look. But when you're looking at, don't think it's just WordPress.
No.
There's Joomla and Drupal and, site builders and all of this stuff. And I can assure you, everybody's got some problems.
Microsoft front page.
Wow, that's an old school thing.
Hey, it wouldn't surprise me a bit if there's not still somebody.
Wasn't that the other big one?
Yeah.
Front page and Dreamweaver back in the day.
Yeah.
But for the most part, if you will ask the questions and then follow the red flags, like we always say, if they say, oh, it's covered, don't worry about it, right away I would worry. Number one. If they want more information, okay, now I can talk with you. Okay. And if they say, we've looked at that, we've reviewed the OCR guidance, now you're good.
Yep.
You're good, as good as you can be if they are actually looking at it and looking into it. That's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, but definitely run that tool, that scan, because that's going to help you realize what's on your site or the site of somebody else that you want to have some dirt on, whichever. But it'll help you figure that out. But run it against your site, see what's on there. Even if you don't have the metapixel thing on there, you might see other stuff on there that you're like, oh, wow, I didn't know my site was doing that. We need to have that looked at. But yeah, you're talking about the site notifications. I had on one of my sites last night, I had put in a support ticket for the developer to look at one of my sites. And last night, my email was blowing slap up because everything the developer did was setting off alarms. I was like, good grief.
But that's good. You tested it.
Oh, it was tested. I mean, everything they changed, man. I was getting just email after email after email. But yeah, the cool thing was I realized a lot of it worked.
Well, and I tell you another thing is the software that the websites are running on need to stay up to date. Yeah. And we're talking about the server software, the web server software, because there's layers.
There's multiple layers of it. Yeah, so, years ago we had a web server because we had purchased a virtual private server, so it wasn't like we had a server sitting in our own office. We had the virtual private server. We had some sites on it. Every site was locked down, but the server itself didn't have that much security on it. And this was years ago, really before security was that big of a deal. Everybody could just run regular antivirus. And so anyway, one of the sites ended up getting hacked, and they didn't do anything to it. I think they just redirected it. So it wasn't a big deal, but it was a big deal in the fact that it got hacked. And, I was running around everywhere going, how in the world did this happen? Because we got all these sites locked down. And we found out that that's what it is. They got in through the server and just pivoted while they were in there. Couldn't do a whole lot of damage, but still, that wasn't the point. The point is they got in, period.
Exactly. And you don't want any footprints.
No. So from there, we started making a lot of changes and all that. But, again, can't assume, and you want to make sure you check all that.
And here's another thing for web developers. They'll say, well, we can't upgrade that to the latest version because that'll break your website.
Yeah.
Okay. No.
Yeah.
I remember I was on the phone with a hosting provider we were using at one point, and I look, and our server, the PHP version, which is one of the layers of software, the PHP version had been discontinued, and I'm like, okay, I got to upgrade that. And they had the option to do it, but I had a call, and I'm talking to the dude, and I'm like, I need you to do this. And he goes, well, we don't do that, but you will for me. But this is going to break your website, and you're not going to come back and demand that we do all of this if this breaks your website. And I'm like, look, if my site got hacked, that's going to damage my reputation way more than my site being down.
Mm-hmm.
So do it, and I will deal on the back end. I can bring my site down any day. Way better than I can handle my site has been hacked because I didn't keep my software up to date, which is what I preach about all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, dude, go listen to Help Me with HIPAA podcast and make sure you rate us and give us 5 stars.
Yeah. I had a client not that long ago that had a POS software, and they were running an old version of it.
POS, for those who don't know.
A point of sale.
Mm-hmm.
It's a point of sale system, and they were running this old version of Adobe product, and you couldn't update it. If you did, it broke it. And they had to stay. I think Adobe, the product was like on version 23, and they had to stay on 8. Like, you got to stay on 8. I'm like, dude, you're almost 16 versions behind. You're 15 versions behind. And you've got to stay on it because of this system. Come on now.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, they've since moved past it. Finally, they went to another vendor, but that was just crazy.
Well, especially something like Adobe that gets so many updates for security reasons all the time. I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Come on, man. We should start our own version of that.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we found out you couldn't update it the hard way. Because when we took the client over, of course, the first thing we do is come in, start updating everything, is patching stuff and fixing the holes. And guess what? It broke.
Boom.
Yeah. And it took a long time to track that down because you don't suspect something like, an Adobe patch.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, yeah, I mean, come on. It should work.
Yeah, and how is an Adobe so intertwined in point of sale?
Yeah,
for that matter?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't want to know. I wasn't being paid to be the support for the software. I had them on the phone like, y'all need to figure it out. We broke it, but y'all need to figure out why.
Well, I think we've covered this. We could go on with these kind of stories.
Yeah, we could.
But make sure somebody is asking questions that knows, at least has a clue that this stuff is going on at all. And if they haven't read this, there's obviously a link to the bulletin and other information about this on the show notes page. Go send them there. Have them listen to this.
Mm-hmm.
Whatevs. Just don't let it go. They said it's okay.
Is that what they sound like?
Yeah.
All right, then. We don't want to sound that way. All right, folks, that's our show for today. Thanks for listening. Be sure to rate and review us. We need it. So head on over to your favorite place and rate the podcast. Let us know you did, because maybe we'll read one on the air. How about that?
If we can find it. You know how we are.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Send us a link to it. And as always, for Don and myself, remember, HIPAA's not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.